They say when a man's life changes forever, he usually doesn't see it coming. That wasn't true for me. I saw it coming in high definition. It all started the night of the fundraiser gala at the Ritzwood Hotel. Now, I hate these events. Everyone's dressed like royalty and talks like they've never spilled ketchup on themselves. But my wife, Elise, lived for them. She said it was important for her art gallery's image, and by extension, mine. You being there makes me look stable, she joked once. I smiled, not because it was funny, because it was probably true. We had been married 12 years, and somewhere between "I do" and "Where were you last night?" something quietly slipped out of our hands. It wasn't loud. Love doesn't scream when it dies. It just forgets to say good morning. Anyway, back to the gala. I walked in wearing my usual black suit, the one Elise said made me look like a freshly ironed accountant. She was already there, sipping champagne and glowing under the chandelier light like a movie star who wandered off the set. That woman could stop a conversation just by walking into a room, and she knew it. "Daniel," she said, greeting me with a kiss that landed somewhere near my cheek. "You're late." "I'm punctual," I replied. "The champagne just makes time go faster." She laughed politely, the kind of laugh you give when a stranger makes a joke in an elevator. We were surrounded by people in tuxedos and overpriced dresses, everyone networking, pretending they actually liked brie cheese. Then came him. "Daniel, this is Sebastian Lane," she said, turning slightly to reveal a tall man behind her. His handshake was firm, a little too practiced, like he had watched tutorials on how to exude confidence. "He's a collector. Just bought one of my pieces." Ah, the collector. The patron. The guy who was suddenly showing up in too many stories about work dinners and last-minute meetings. But I was civil. I always am. That's what makes the fall from grace more satisfying later. "Pleasure," I said, offering the same smile I used at job interviews and funerals. Sebastian nodded. "Elise speaks highly of you." "Only when I'm not around," I quipped. They laughed. I didn't. We made small talk. Art, economy, wine, but I noticed everything. The way he stood slightly closer to her than a casual acquaintance should. How she looked at him when she thought I wasn't watching. It was a look I used to get, back when we both still believed marriage was the beginning of something and not a contract with expiration in invisible ink. I stayed for 2 hours. I smiled. I clinked glasses. I listened to strangers explain why bronze sculptures were criminally undervalued. But by the end of the night, I had all the evidence I needed. Not in photographs. Not in words. In glances. The betrayal hadn't been confessed yet, but it had already happened. And I started planning. I didn't go home angry that night. I went home efficient. It's funny what clarity betrayal gives you. Most people expect rage, maybe some broken dishes or dramatic exits. But me? I opened a notepad. I made a checklist. Get proof. Stay calm. Don't confront until it hurts. Make it count. The house was dark when I got in. Elise wouldn't be home until later. Drinks with patrons was her excuse. I used the time wisely. Started with her laptop. Password hadn't changed. Art Queen 22. Still vain, still predictable. Emails. Clean. Too clean. Gallery calendar. Odd. 3 meetings with Sebastian in 1 week. I'm no art curator, but I'm pretty sure buying a sculpture doesn't require back-to-back strategy sessions at a boutique hotel cafe. I didn't have the smoking gun yet, but I had the smoke. The next day, I took a personal day. Told work I had a dentist appointment. The truth was less hygienic. I hired a private investigator named Greg. Guy looked like a human trench coat. Didn't smile much, but he had the eyes of someone who noticed everything and judged nothing. "I need to know what's going on," I told him. "And I don't want speculation. I want timestamps." Greg just nodded and handed me a clipboard. "Standard rates. I'll be invisible." "You're already halfway there," I said. He smirked once. We had a deal. That week, I played husband of the year. Cooked dinner twice. Brought her coffee in bed. Even offered to rub her feet like I used to back, when the world still felt permanent. Elise seemed thrown off, unsure if I was trying to win her back or prepping her for a life insurance scam. "Everything okay?" she asked over dinner one night, swirling her wine like she could read fortunes in it. "Yeah," I said. "I just missed you." That part wasn't a lie. I did miss her. I missed the version of her that used to choose me. Friday night came with a message from Greg. Just an address, a time, and 1 photo. Elise. Sebastian. Hotel parking garage. Her hand on his shoulder. His hand on her lower back. their bodies pressed close like secrets. I zoomed in on the license plate in the corner of the photo, her car. No mistaking it. No misinterpreting it. No deniability. And just like that, the checklist advanced. I had proof. Next, I needed patience. Because see, revenge isn't about speed. It's about precision. Saturday morning started like any other. Coffee. News. Silence between two people who used to talk about everything from movies to the meaning of life. Elise sat across from me, scrolling on her phone with the grace of someone who believed secrets were bulletproof. I watched her fingers dance across the screen. The same fingers that used to hold mine during thunderstorms and funerals. Now they held someone else's attention. Probably Sebastian's. Plans today? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. She looked up, blinked like I'd startled her. Oh, yeah. Gallery's hosting a last-minute walkthrough for some investors. Might run a little late. Should I keep dinner warm or just eat without you? She smiled. You don't have to wait up. And there it was permission to stay ignorant. But I had other plans. At 6:15 p.m., Greg texted me again. Ritz-Carlton. Room 1408. They just checked in together. I drove there with the kind of calm that would make a priest nervous. When I arrived, I didn't knock. I didn't bang on the door like a maniac. No, I went to the front desk with a suit jacket and a smile. I'm here to deliver a surprise bouquet to room 1408. Anniversary thing. They requested privacy, but flowers don't wait. The concierge hesitated, then handed me a keycard with a conspiratorial wink. Hopeless romantics. Gotta love him. I took the elevator up alone. My heart didn't race. My palms didn't sweat. Whatever part of me used to flinch at betrayal had gone numb days ago. I slid the keycard into the lock. Click. The door opened. And there they were. Not in bed. Not in the middle of some steamy romance novel scene. Just sitting on the couch, close, casual. 2 glasses of wine. Her shoes were off. His tie was loose. They looked up at me in perfect stereo shock. Daniel, she asked, her voice high-pitched, the kind people use when caught shoplifting morals. Sebastian stood up, hands slightly raised like I'd walked in with a weapon. I figured I'd join, I said, stepping inside. I mean, you did say the gallery had investors. Elise stood, mouth open but empty of words. For once, her silence was honest. Sebastian, bless his generic soul, tried to play diplomat. Listen, man, this isn't what you think. I turned to him and offered the fakest smile in recorded history. Oh, good. I thought you were sleeping with my wife. But if it's something else, like a book club or a 2-person yoga retreat, I'd love to hear it. He cleared his throat and looked away. Elise started to cry, or at least she thought she did. Daniel, I didn't mean for it to happen like this. That's funny, I cut in. Because you planned the lies. You rehearsed the stories. You bought new lingerie for the act. That doesn't sound like an accident. That sounds like choreography. She blinked, mascara starting to smudge. I was going to tell you. Yeah? When? After dessert? On our next anniversary? No answer. I looked around the room. Wine glasses, soft jazz playing, her scarf on the armrest like a careless confession. I hope he was worth it, I said, calmly, as I pulled the folder from inside my coat pocket. Because starting tomorrow morning, you're going to find out just how much this mistake really cost. Sebastian shifted again. Are you threatening us? I looked at him, really looked. He wasn't tall when he wasn't smug. He wasn't dangerous without the shadows. No, I said. I don't need threats. I have paperwork. And you, Sebastian? You just inherited a nightmare. I walked out before either of them could speak again. The truth was out. The curtain had dropped. And my revenge was only just beginning. I didn't go home right away. Instead, I parked in the lot of a 24-hour diner and sat there with the engine running, watching the neon sign flicker like it had the hiccups. I didn't order food. Just coffee. Black, bitter, and boiling fitting. My mind was quiet. Not empty. Just organized. Like every piece of emotion had been filed into cabinets labeled useful and not anymore. The betrayal wasn't what crushed me. It was the smugness. The planning. The way Elise looked surprised, not guilty, when I walked in. As if her only mistake was underestimating my timing. By the time I pulled into our driveway just after midnight, the house looked smaller. Maybe it was the weight of what I now knew pressing down on the roof. Maybe it was just me, seeing it differently. Like when you say a word too many times and it loses its meaning. The porch light was still on. Classic Elise, presentation over substance. I walked in and headed straight to the study. No flick lights. Just moonlight spilling through the blinds. I sat at my desk, pulled open the bottom drawer, and retrieved what would now become the centerpiece of this little opera. The folder. Inside were bank records. Copies of Elise's gallery fund transfers to a private account in her maiden name. Pictures Greg had taken. Screenshots from a secret email account I found logged in on the iPad we supposedly shared. There were even a few social media DMs between her and Sebastian. I'm no expert, but if you're going to cheat, maybe don't use emojis you've never once sent your husband. I placed each item on the desk like evidence in a courtroom. Not because I was looking to press charges, but because I was building something. A blueprint for her collapse. The next few days were a masterclass in poker face. Elise tried to act like nothing happened. Maybe she thought denial would buy her time. Or maybe she hoped I'd pretend it didn't matter. She cooked a little more than usual. Wore perfume I hadn't smelled in years. Asked about my day. The irony was rich. On Wednesday, she left her phone on the kitchen counter while she showered. It buzzed. I didn't even have to touch it. Sebastian's name lit up the screen with a message that read, Thursday. Same place. Tell him you're going to your sister's. I smiled. Because Thursday, my dear Elise, was going to be memorable for entirely different reasons. Thursday arrived with sunshine and clarity. I dressed for work like usual, kissed her on the cheek like I used to when things still meant something, and even took out the trash like a model husband. Then I drove to the lawyer's office. Her name was Marcia Langston. 57 years old, glasses on a chain, and a voice like an ice cube down your spine. The kind of lawyer who didn't ask questions to understand you, only to understand how best to win. I want to file for divorce, I said, sliding the folder across the desk. She opened it, skimmed the contents, and whistled low. She's going to hate how thorough this is. I intend her to. Kids? No. Joint property? The house. I'll be keeping it. You'll see why. She nodded. Infidelity clause? I smiled. That's my favorite part. Marcia got to work like a mechanic under the hood of a dead marriage. Filing forms, outlining steps, walking me through how to serve Elise with papers. But I had a different plan in mind. I want to serve her myself, I said. She looked up, one brow raised. Unusual. Dramatic. Messy. Perfect, I replied. By the time I left the office, the paperwork was printed, signed, and ready to deliver. And Elise? She was busy visiting her sister, a woman who lived 3 states away and hadn't seen Elise in over a year. Greg texted me the update like clockwork. Room 511. She's wearing red. He's already there. Poetic. Really. Scarlet dress. Scarlet woman. I arrived at the hotel 30 minutes later. This time, I didn't bother with deception. I walked straight to the elevator and rode it in silence. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. The revenge wasn't in the confrontation. It was in the performance. When the elevator opened, I stepped out, walked to room 511, and knocked twice. Not loud. Not angry. Just assured. Elise opened the door with a startled look, wearing the red dress from her gallery's anniversary show, the one she told me she'd never wear again because it was too sentimental. Daniel, she said, eyes wide. Surprise, I replied, holding up the envelope. I brought something for you. Before she could speak, I stepped past her and into the room. Sebastian was on the couch, holding a wine glass like a deer caught doing taxes. I handed Elise the envelope. What is this? Divorce papers, I said simply. Her lips parted, but I wasn't done. I know everything. I've known for weeks. This, I motioned to the room, to Sebastian, to the dress. This is just the cherry on top. Sebastian stood up, but I turned to him and added, you might want to stay out of this. You're not even the biggest problem here. Then I looked back at Elise, whose hands had started to tremble. You get nothing, I said softly. No house. No accounts. No more lies. You wanted freedom, Elise? Congratulations. I stepped back toward the door, then paused. Oh, and one more thing. She looked up, her eyes red now. I canceled your gallery's lease this morning. Turns out it was in my name. I do read contracts, you know. She gasped, finally realizing the scale of it. Enjoy the art world, Elise. Hope Sebastian can paint a future for you. And with that, I left. The foundation had cracked. Now it was time to burn the blueprint. It's funny how quickly people change their tone once the cards are face up. Less than 24 hours after I handed Elise those divorce papers, she tried to call me. 4 times. Then she switched to texting, dozens of messages, pinging my phone like a toddler throwing a tantrum in Morse code. Can we talk? I didn't want it to end like this. You're being cruel. Cruel? Now that was rich. The woman who rewrote vows as fiction and treated commitment like an art form she could hang next to an affair was suddenly worried about cruelty. I didn't answer. I was busy being productive. First order of business, changing the locks. Second, meeting with a real estate agent to put the gallery building up for lease. Elise thought she was clever, transferring the business assets to her own accounts. What she didn't realize was that the gallery space itself was mine, an anniversary gift from me to her, with my name still on the deed. Romantic at the time. Devastating now. The new tenants would be moving in by the end of the month. A yoga studio. Very minimalist. They didn't even flinch when I told them Elise might come by screaming. "It's good energy," the woman said. "We can sage it. Good luck with that." Sunday came fast. I was making eggs, because apparently, spite makes you hungry, when Elise showed up at the door. She rang the bell 3 times before I opened it. She was wearing the gray hoodie she always threw on during our fights, the one that said Nantucket, even though she's never been there. Hair in a bun, no makeup, eyes puffy. "Daniel," she said softly. "Can I come in?" I looked her up and down, then looked behind her, just in case she brought backup or Sebastian. Would have loved to see that guy try to invest his way into my kitchen. I stepped aside. She entered slowly, like a guest. Not a wife. Not anymore. The house was quiet. Not the peaceful kind, more like the kind where words hide behind walls, waiting to explode. "I didn't think you'd do it," she said, sitting at the edge of the couch. "Do what?" I asked, still at the kitchen counter. "Leave. Divorce me. You're so patient. I thought maybe you'd forgive me." "Forgive you?" I said, cracking another egg. "For the affair? Or for lying about it every day until I handed you the paperwork?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she stared at her hands like they owed her an apology. "I was lonely," she finally whispered. "We were both lonely. I didn't turn to someone else." Her voice got smaller. "I didn't mean for it to go that far. But it did. And then you kept going. Elise, you didn't trip and fall into another man's bed. You packed a bag, picked a hotel, and made a reservation." Silence. I plated my eggs and sat across from her at the table, calmly eating while she unraveled one invisible thread at a time. "What do you want from me?" she finally asked. "An apology?" "No," I said, setting my fork down. "I want you to understand something." She looked up, eyes glassy. "You ended the marriage the day you chose him. What I did after that, that's just cleanup. I'm not being vindictive. I'm being thorough." Elise shook her head. "You're not the man I married." "No," I agreed. "That man would have stayed. He would have forgiven. And he would have died slowly from the inside out, smiling while you kept lying to his face. That man's gone." She started crying. And let me be clear, I didn't enjoy seeing her in pain. I didn't smile. I didn't mock. But I also didn't feel sorry. Some wounds aren't tragic. They're earned. She wiped her face and reached into her purse. "I brought something," she said, sliding an envelope across the table. I opened it. Inside was a check. $50,000. "My personal account," she said. "It's what I have access to right now. I know you've already taken the gallery space. I wanted to make things right." I pushed the envelope back. "I don't want your money, Elise. I want my peace." Her mouth tightened, like she didn't know how to live without control. And that's when I said it, the thing I'd rehearsed in my head 100 times but hadn't planned on saying out loud. "I loved you so much, I would have forgiven a mistake. But you didn't make a mistake, Elise. You made a choice. And now I'm making mine." She stood slowly. The hoodie hung off her like deflated armor. No more smug confidence. No more gallery owner swagger. Just Elise, the woman who threw away everything for an empty thrill. As she walked toward the door, I added, "Oh, and Sebastian?" She turned. "He's already job hunting. The firm cut ties with him yesterday. Conflict of interest, bad PR, all that." Her face twisted. "How did you?" "I told you," I said. "I'm not being cruel. I'm being precise." She left without another word. That night, I sat on the back porch with a glass of bourbon and my old record player spinning Otis Redding. The stars were out. The air was cool. For the first time in months, the silence wasn't heavy. It was mine. I pulled out my phone and deleted her contact. Not blocked, not muted, just gone. Because sometimes revenge isn't about destruction. It's about removal. Removing the lies, the noise, the rot, the past, and what's left. Just enough space to rebuild. Elise always hated silence. I don't mean the kind you get when you're reading or walking through the woods. I mean the kind that settles into a house like dust, quiet, still, full of everything unsaid. It made her uncomfortable. She'd fill the air with background noise, music, chatter, random questions about groceries we didn't need. Now that silence was her only companion. I know this because Greg, the private investigator turned part-time therapist, was still feeding me updates. I hadn't asked him to. But once a man sees the cracks in a marriage, he can't help but keep looking, even if the building's already condemned. Elise called Sebastian 12 times yesterday. Greg reported over coffee that Tuesday. He's not picking up. Guess love doesn't have unlimited minutes, I said. Greg gave me a look. You sure you're done? Because you've already won. I stirred my coffee. There's winning. And then there's finishing the game. And I was far from finished. I waited until Friday to make my next move. That's the day Elise received a letter. A real one. Printed. Sealed. Delivered by courier. It wasn't from me. Not directly. It was from the board of the Metropolitan Arts Trust, the same people who gave her gallery its grant every quarter. In the letter, they thanked her for her previous contributions and regretfully informed her that due to public concerns surrounding internal misconduct and personal entanglements with investors, they'd be suspending funding for the foreseeable future. Now, did I maybe forward a few screenshots and hotel receipts to their anonymous tip line? Possibly. Maybe I used a burner email. Maybe I included a little flair. Concerned supporter of the arts signature. Art is about drama. I simply honored the theme. Elise called me within the hour. This time, I answered. Daniel, what the hell did you do? Good afternoon to you too. Don't play coy with me. Her voice was sharp. Frantic. The trust pulled their grant. You're behind this. I'm flattered you think I have that kind of influence. You know they pulled funding because of Sebastian. Oh? I thought you said that wasn't serious. Just a temporary emotional detour, right? She growled an actual growl. Like a wolf caught in a trap it's set for someone else. Why are you doing this? She hissed. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling fan spinning above me like it had all the time in the world. Because, Elise, you burned down the house. I'm just making sure there's no one inside pretending it's still a home. She went quiet. For the first time in weeks. Then, a whisper. I made a mistake. I nodded, even though she couldn't see it. Yeah, you did. And the mistake wasn't cheating. It was thinking I'd be too weak to do anything about it. Click. She hung up. Progress. Over the next few days, I got updates without asking. She was packing. Half-heartedly, then angrily. She hadn't found a new place yet. The gallery lease was terminated. A few artists pulled their work from her inventory. Apparently, cheating on your husband and then losing your biggest investor doesn't inspire confidence in your curation skills. Sebastian? Gone. His wife found out. Filed for divorce. And he'd been let go quietly from the investment firm, personal reasons, they said. There's always a polite way to say your drama made us uncomfortable. He stopped answering Elise's calls. Blocked her, even. She was unraveling. Slowly, privately. Not the public meltdown kind. No screaming in the streets. Just a woman watching the scaffolding of her life fall apart, one beam at a time. And me? I slept better than I had in years. Saturday night, I hosted a poker game. My first in a long time. For friends from work, a bottle of whiskey, a bowl of pretzels, and a fresh deck of cards. I heard about the gallery. Josh, a colleague, said as he folded a weak hand. You okay? I sipped my drink. Yeah. Feels like I finally vacuumed a corner of my life I kept ignoring. He laughed. Man, I don't know how you're staying so calm. If it were me, I'd be flipping tables. I'm not angry, I said. Anger's temporary. I'm building something permanent. Like what? I looked at the cards in my hand. A pair of kings. Not bad. Like a life where I don't wake up wondering if the person next to me is lying. They nodded, not pressing. Some pain doesn't need explaining. After they left, I stood in the kitchen, loading the dishwasher, humming an old tune I hadn't heard since college. That's when it hit me. I wasn't just punishing Elise. I was healing myself. Not in a burn sage and light candles kind of way. In a real way. The kind that starts with cutting out the rot and ends with planting something better in its place. I wasn't just finishing a marriage. I was freeing myself from it. I got one final message from Elise later that night. Not a call. Not a voicemail. A text. I understand now. You were the strong one. I just didn't see it until it was too late. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I deleted the message. Not out of spite. Out of peace. Because that chapter? It's closed. I didn't hear from Elise for 2 weeks after that last message. Not that I was counting. The silence felt final this time. Not avoidance, not delay, just emptiness. Like a museum after hours, still technically standing, but with nothing left to see. I went back to my life. My real life. The one I'd let collect dust while trying to keep our illusion polished. Started going to the gym again. Met up with old friends I hadn't seen since my wedding. Some of them didn't even know we'd split. "How's Elise?" they'd ask. And I'd shrug. Out of the picture. They thought I was being metaphorical. I wasn't. I even dusted off the old guitar I used to play in college. My fingers stumbled through the chords at first, but eventually, the muscle memory returned, like my dignity. Greg called me once more. "She tried to visit the gallery this week," he said. "Didn't go inside. Just stood there. Watched them paint over the old logo." I pictured her standing on the sidewalk in that gray hoodie again, the same one she wore when she cried at the house. Watching something she built vanish under layers of someone else's future. A fitting image. It wasn't revenge anymore. It was just closure. The divorce finalized on a Tuesday. I didn't pop champagne. I didn't make a speech. I just signed the documents, thanked Marcia the lawyer, who gave me a surprisingly warm nod, and walked outside into a spring breeze that felt earned. Back at home, I pulled the last photo of Elise and me from the mantle. We were in Venice, kissing under some overpriced bridge with tourists clapping around us. It had once meant something. Now, just a picture of two strangers trying to convince each other they were still in love. I didn't shred it. I didn't burn it. I slid it into a drawer. Not because I wanted to keep it, but because it's important to remember the difference between who someone was and who they became. That same day, I put in an offer on a new house. Smaller. Simpler. 2 bedrooms, plenty of light, a backyard with real grass instead of landscaped perfection. It wasn't for show. It was for me. For the version of me that didn't compromise who he was to support someone else's mask. The offer was accepted by Thursday. That Friday, I slept like a stone. A month passed. Then another. I thought Elise had disappeared completely until I saw her again, by accident. I was leaving the bookstore. Yes, I go to bookstores. No, I don't use self-help sections, and there she was across the street. Same face. Different posture. Lighter, maybe. Or just resigned. She didn't see me. But I saw enough. She wasn't glowing anymore. That glow she used to wear like armor? Gone. Now, she just looked human. Not the goddess she pretended to be, not the villain I once painted her as. Just someone who made a mess of things and now had to live in it. I felt nothing. Not hate. Not sadness. Just nothing. And honestly, that felt like a bigger one than anything else. She no longer lived in my head. She didn't orbit my thoughts like some dying star. She was just another chapter. One I could flip past without wincing. I went home. Made tea. Read a book about shipwrecks. Appropriate, I suppose. Let's be clear, revenge was never about punishment. It was about balance. About returning things to a state where I didn't feel like I was constantly gasping for breath in a relationship that was slowly drowning me. And now? Now I breathe easy. I started seeing someone. Not serious. Not some rebound fling. Just a woman named Claire who smiles like she means it and talks like silence doesn't scare her. She doesn't ask about Elise. I don't volunteer it. That part of my life is filed under lessons, not baggage. One day, I found the folder. The one I'd used to track Elise's affair. The receipts, the photos, the damning trail of secrets. I put it through the shredder. Not because I was letting her off the hook, but because I was finally off it. You see, revenge isn't cruel when it's deserved. It's just necessary, not to ruin someone, but to rescue yourself.